Thank you, thank you. The following is one of my voiceover demos. If you're a voiceover artist and you would like to advertise one of your demos on my podcast, please send an MP3 to thedrill12, all one word, at gmail.com. That's thedrill12 at gmail.com. Back in a minute.
Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate, just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
I couldn't get hard with this woman I was with. And by the way, if you're a guy, never tell your guy friends that happened to you. That you couldn't get hard with a woman. Your best friend just immediately becomes a detective. And the case is, are you gay? Just right away, your friend's like Charles Henson with the LGPD. You're telling me there was a naked woman in that room and you couldn't get hard? You're like, dude, I'm not gay. He's like, then where was your penis on the night of the 14th? 14th. That's June 14th. Pride Month.
Good morning. It's Friday, Engine Company 82 Friday, July the 19th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have headlines, my take, and report from Engine Company number 82. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
The U.S. Air Force Blue.
Thank you. And now the Bloody Tourist gives us the headlines.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Barney & Company on this Friday, July the 19th. It's a tech outage that's affecting airlines, banks, and some media companies around the world. The outage has been linked to CrowdStrike. That's a cybersecurity company whose software is used by businesses around the globe. Some computers running Microsoft Windows crashed. Now, the CEO of CrowdStrike says, and I'm quoting now, the issue has been identified, isolated, and a fix has been deployed, end quote. The stock price of these two companies clearly being hammered this morning. You will be seeing a lot of scenes like this, long lines at airports. Now, this is a developing story. We'll update it throughout the show. Donald Trump is now the official Republican nominee for president. He delivered a 90-minute acceptance speech. Melania was there, Barron was not. Trump paid tribute to the firefighter killed during the assassination attempt. He spoke at length about the shot that came close to killing him. And he said he felt very safe because I had God on my side. I felt that, he said. The speech did not go down well with everyone. The New York Times says Donald Trump promised to bridge political divides and then returned to delighting in deepening them. You'll hear more of what he said, throughout today's show. To the markets, the tech outage looms. Large, although the exchanges say trading will begin as normal. The Dow down about 60 points, modest gain for the S&P, Nasdaq down about 40. Interest rates moving up. The 10-year Treasury now yields 4.21%, up just a fraction. And the 2-year, I should say, that's at 4.49, just below 4.5%. Bitcoin firm, $64,000 a coin. Gold holding above $2,400 an ounce, but only holding it just is down $50 today. Politics. There is now wide speculation that President Biden will step aside very soon, possibly this weekend. Nancy Pelosi told him he couldn't win. The polls are against him. CBS polling shows he's now 5 points behind Trump nationally. And top donors tell him the money has dried up. We don't know how Biden is reacting to this because he's in isolation, recovering from COVID. On the show today, what's next if the president does exit the race? I'll tell you, intense political infighting among Democrats, that seems to be almost inevitable. And oh, what a dreadful, horrible week it's been for the president. And oh, what a triumphant week it's been for his challenger, Donald J. Trump. Aren't you glad it's Friday? Barney & Company is about to begin.
And that was the headlines. Back in a minute. Whoop, whoop, whoop. My take.
Markets. And now this. If the president steps aside, what happens? Well, first, let's be clear, he would be out of the race, but he would still be the president. It's the ticket that would change. The Democrats have to figure out who's going to take the top spot, and that is not going to be easy. Anonymous sources suggest Biden does not want to endorse his own vice president, that he wants to leave it open. Ooh, imagine the chaos. There would be an unholy scramble as top-of-the-ticket wannabes try to line themselves up. Imagine the fury of Kamala Harris supporters if she's passed over. But no one goes to the top of the ticket until the delegates vote. They are talking about holding an online poll in early August so that they've got maybe 2 weeks to coalesce around a single candidate. Good luck with that. If they can't coalesce, then they're heading to an open convention. Horror. That's not happened since 1968. It was a disaster back then. The Democrat Hubert Humphrey lost to Richard Nixon. And by the way, that convention in 68 was in Chicago. That's where it is this year, too. If President Biden does indeed step aside soon, then we're in for a furious bout of intense election politics. But whoever they land on, it's hard to imagine them beating Trump. If Biden doesn't step aside and just plows on regardless, it's hard to imagine him convincing voters that he can be president for another 4 years. It looks grim for the Democrats this year, but they brought it on themselves by letting the aging Joe Biden run for another term. One last point. If President Biden cannot continue to run his re-election campaign, how can he continue to run the country? And just as important, who is really running the country now? Second hour of Varney just getting started.
So, as my grandmother used to say, the Democrats are getting they're getting what they so richly deserve. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Chapter 2 of Report from Engine Company 82.
It is starting to get smoky now that the water is on the fire. The fire in the hallway goes out quickly. We are putting 250 gallons of water per minute on it. Jim makes the landing and fights with the hose as he makes the bend. Captain Albert Gray is next to him. Beautiful. Easy now. Keep low. Beautiful, he is saying. Carol and I are behind, pulling on the hose to take the strain off Jim's arms. The heat in the walls is radiating out, and my body is dripping, and my clothes are saturated with perspiration. I put my mouth to the floor in an attempt to breathe cool air, and suddenly my throat hurts, like it does after a 2-day drunk and 1,000 cigarettes. I must have taken in some superheated air. I forgot about the second apartment. The fire, lapping out of it, has lit up the hallway again. "Hey, Jim," I shout. "You better turn the line or else we're going to get caught between it." Jim struggles to turn the line again, and he hits the fire in the hall. He moves a foot or so into the apartment. Captain Albert Gray says coolly, "The ceiling is down, Jim, and the floor upstairs is beginning to go. Watch it, because it'll come down in pieces." "Well, let's try to move in just a little more," says Jim. "Then maybe I can hit that room on the left." We push the line in a few feet, and Jim yells, your mother's ass." Part of the floor above is given way. Jim is on his knees, and he wants desperately to get out of the apartment, but he knows better than to shut the nozzle down in a fire like this. The water is our only protection. So, I crawl up fast and take the nozzle from Jim. Vinny and Carmine are down on the floor now. Their masks will make it easier to fight this fire. Vinny takes the nozzle, and I back downstairs to get a mask. Jim is already in the street, breathing the clear air heavily. He has multiple burns on the ears, neck, and shoulders. I put my arm around his waist and say, "You did a beautiful job, Jim, like always." Jim attempts a weak smile and replies, "It couldn't have been too beautiful. The fire's not out yet, is it?" I laugh a little and run to the pumper for the masks. I pass a leaking hose connection and bend low for a drink of water, but I can't swallow. I spit the water out. Valenzio has taken out 2 masks for me. I put mine on and throw the other over my shoulder for Captain Albert Gray. The second alarm companies are in now. Hose lines, spaghetti, are all over the street, up the adjoining building, up the fire escapes, up the aerial ladder. Some are bulging with water, and some haven't been charged. As I return to my company, I pass Carol on the stairs. "What's up, Benny?" I ask. "I got a goddamn cinder down my glove. The back of my hand is all blistered, so I'll have to take it up for a while." He sounds defeated. "Take care of yourself," I murmur as I continue up the stairs. I feel sorry for Benny because I know he wouldn't leave the action for a burned hand, not unless Captain Albert Gray ordered him down. I met the company on the 3rd floor landing. They were pushed back. Captain Albert Gray backs down the stairs a little to put his mask on. Carmine is on the nozzle now, and I ask him how they were pushed out of the apartment. He tells me that Engine 45 had water pressure trouble, and they had to shut down their line. The fire then got into the hall again, and my company was caught between 2 fires. The fundamental rule in this business is never to let the fire get behind you. So 82 had to fight their way back to the hall stairs. I take the nozzle and tell Carmine to take a blow. The knob is heavy, and the back pressure makes my arms strain. I know I won't lose control of it, though, because Vinny has a firm grip on the hose behind me. We are now keeping the fire inside the 2 apartments. At least it hasn't crossed the hall. Engine 45 gets pressure in its line again and returns to the landing. The fire is now spreading throughout both floors above us. We yell to Engine 45 to take the 2nd apartment again, and Engine 73 passes us as it humps its hose to the 4th floor. It is still ash hot, but the masks make it a lot easier to breathe. We are now at the door of the first apartment, and engine 45 is at the second. We move in a little, and 45 moves in. Captain Albert is next to me, and I say, "The only way to put this fire out is to move in on it. Otherwise, we'll be here all night." "We're going to be here all night anyway, so take it slow," he answers. Vinny moves up and takes the nozzle, and Carmine moves behind Vinny. Deputy Chief Kelson is on the scene now. He calls the captain on the walkie-talkie, and Albert Gray tells him our position and progress. Chief Kelson tells him to hold the position and not to take any unnecessary risks. We have advanced 5 feet into the apartment. The fire is burning freely overhead in front of us, and we watch it closely as anyone would want to watch a fire. We have killed a good part of it in the room on the left, but we can't get it all unless we move up a few feet. But we can't move up because of the fire overhead. We don't want to get directly underneath it. God knows what will fall. Suddenly, the fire starts pushing in at us. It's coming hard, and our line can't hold it back. We know what it is. A company has opened a line from the front fire escape, and they are pushing the fire toward us. We have to retreat to the hall again. Captain Albert Gray calls the chief on the walkie-talkie and asks him to have that line shut down. In a minute, the order is given, and the fire lets up. We can move in once more. Carmine takes the nozzle from Vinny, and I move behind Carmine. We know now that we'll have to drown this fire, not attack it. And we try to get in the most comfortable position possible. Carmine sits on his heels, and I kneel on both knees. We start to get sprayed with rebounding water. Engine 73 is above us and trying to move in. Carmine leans over, puts one hand on top of his helmet, and starts shaking his head. He doesn't say anything, but his head still shakes. "What's wrong, Carmine?" I ask. "I think I got burned." "Where? On the neck?" I ask Captain Albert for his lamp. Carmine is still moving the nozzle back and forth. I move his helmet up and pull back his coat. "You did get burned, Carmine. It's all blistered already. About 3 inches long. It must have been an ember." Carmine moves out, and Vinny takes the knob. I try to think of something funny to say to Captain Albert. I can tell that he doesn't feel too happy. "Your company is slowly diminishing, Cap," I say. "Pretty soon, there won't be any more Engine 82. He smiles, resignedly, and says, "It's just one of those things. Look at the great job we did earlier. No one got hurt there. This is just one of those fires. They happen from time to time, that's all." The fire is darkened down. Chief Kelson calls on the walkie-talkie. "Engine 82, I'm sending Engine 88 to relieve you. Report to me in front of the fire building." We don't mind giving the line to Engine 88 because it's only a question of holding the position now and keeping water on the fire. We did our job. The pressure is off, and we walk down the stairs to a well-needed break. Vinny Royce, Captain Albert, and I report to the chief. He is a big man, handsome in that disciplined military way. His eyes are bright and alert, and as I look at them, I can sense intelligence and concern. "You did a good job in there, Cap," he says to Albert. "Take your men now and rest for a while." He looks at Vinny and me. "Nice job, 82. We walk to the pumper where Benny, Jim, and Carmine are sitting, waiting for an ambulance to take them to the hospital. I am about to ask them how they feel, but Benny speaks first. "Did you hear about Richie Rittman?" "What?" Benny asks. "He broke his ankle. At least, they think it's broke. But he made a good rescue. He got 2 kids and their mother out from up above. They were huddled in a bathroom. And as he was carrying a kid down the aerial, he missed the last rung. They went over on his foot. They took him to Bronx Hospital, so I guess we'll see him there." I go to get a drink of water from a kind of spigot Bill has set up at the hydrant. My mouth is very dry, but that happens after every fire. As I swallow the water, a strange feeling makes me bend over and spit out what is left in my mouth. It feels like the water has been pressed through a pinhole. The throat passage isn't working right, and I tell Captain Albert that I can't swallow normally. He sends me to the chief. The chief takes my name and tells me to wait with the others for the ambulance. Besides the guys from Engine 82, there is a man from Engine 45 who tripped over a hose in the hall. He has a gash across his forehead and he holds a handkerchief to it. The ambulance finally comes. It looks like a converted bread wagon, but it's warm, and I feel relaxed as I sink into the soft mattress of the stretcher. "Come on, get up and make room for the rest of us," orders Benny. "What do you think this is, a hotel?" It's almost 10:30 as we walk into the emergency room. There is a doctor and 2 nurses waiting for us. The doctor ministers to the man with a cut forehead, and the nurses go about cleaning the burns. One of the nurses, a large black woman, makes small talk as she works on Jim's stack. "You firemen are always in here. I don't know why they don't make a special room for you, with a big sign at the door, firemen only. This hospital is busy enough, but you firemen make us twice as busy. What is it that you do that you can't do it without getting hurt? Lord knows the fires had to be put out, but can't you find a better way?" The other nurse quietly washes Carmine's neck. She is slender and pretty, smooth olive skin, and long black hair pinned up beneath her starched cap. She moves in quick, determined motions with an air of professionalism that attracts me. She leans her elbow on the back of Carmine's lowered head, applies the bandage, and then confidently lifts his chin with her fingers. "Would you sit over there, please?" she says. It is not a request, but a pleasant command. She looks at Benny. "Are you next?" Benny sits on the stool and she holds his hand. He has a burn the size of a silver dollar behind his right thumb, and he winces as she wipes it with soapy gauze. But he's enjoying the attention, and I silently wish I could trade places with him. The doctor comes to me armed with a flashlight and a tongue depressor. He chokes me in the gentle, easy way all doctors choke people when they look at throats. "You'll be okay," he says, "but don't smoke for a week or use your voice too much. The throat is irritated, but it's not burned, luckily." He writes a prescription for a syrup and tells me to take it 3 times a day. The telephone rings. It is the fire department medical officer, and he wants to talk to the attending physician. The doctor talks into the receiver in the matter-of-fact way doctors talk to each other. The conversation is brief, and he turns to me and says, "The department doctor wants to talk to one of you." This is Fireman Smith speaking. Listen, Smith, are the other men with you? Carroll, Stack, Belly, and McDowell?" McDowell? "Yes, the man from Engine Company 45. Oh, yes, yeah, everyone's here." I had forgotten about that guy. "Well, tell them that you are all to report to the medical office a week from Monday. We won't have to worry about Rickman because he has a broken leg. Do you have the message?" "Yes, sir, a week from Monday. Thank you. Goodbye." I live in a small town called Washingtonville. It is a pretty town, located 60 miles north of the city, and the only objection I have to it is the length of its name. The surrounding countryside is filled with the soft, rambling hills of pasture land, and it is only in the past decade that the dairy farmers have begun to sell pieces of their farms to developers. People were, and still are, moving from the city in droves, buying their little piece of America. Cops, firemen, construction workers, school teachers, engineers, and auto mechanics, all abandoning the place that provides them a livelihood. Why not? After living in tenements all my life, I want to give my 3 sons a little more space than I had. A place where they can ride a bicycle and breathe clean air. My piece of America is a 4-bedroom house on a half-acre of ground. The house is built on top of a hill, overlooking distant mountains and my neighbor's backyard. It is peaceful and plain. I can't enjoy the solitude Thoreau talked about, not with the kids playing noisily in the yard, or the roar of a neighbor's lawnmower or snowblower, but I can plant a bean row if I want to. Like most firemen who have moved from the city, my children are my first consideration. I want them to be able to go to school without being held up by a fifth grader for their lunch money. They can ride their bicycles through the neighborhood with a feeling of freedom. They can park their bikes and go rambling through the woods knowing that the bikes will be there on their return. They can learn to defend themselves and to stick up for what they think is right by arguing with the kids next door. They won't have to fight their way through a band of marauding youths. There aren't any. They have a good chance of reaching adolescence unscarred. Of course, things change. People change from day to day. The day may come to gather the family and possessions and move on. It's my job as head of the family to watch for changes that will alter our relation to our society. Right now, we feel secure. Tomorrow, perhaps, we may have to move on. It's not like running away, but rather like keeping one step ahead of insanity. New York City is simply too big. I have lived in it too long to hate it, but I know it too well to love it. I am still a part of it, yet I feel removed, like a broken jockey who grooms horses. I earn my living caring for it, but I feel helpless because I know that I can't train it or make it win. It's 2:30 a.m. We're spraying 250 gallons of water a minute at the fire, and it seems like the wind is driving each cold drop back into our faces. With each bitter gust, I swear to God, I won't stand another one. But I do. Another and another. We've been here over an hour now. The fire is still burning freely. If we could only go inside the building and get close to the heat. The chief says it is too dangerous, that the roof might collapse at any moment. I'm breathing through my mouth because the cold has penetrated beyond the roof of my nose and my head aches. The wind picks up, and now the water is hitting us like pellets shot against a plastic surface. Icicles have formed on the protective rim of my leather helmet, and they break off as I move to reinforce my grip on the fighting hose. Why don't we get some relief here? I yell to the men supporting me from behind, the men of Engine Company 82. Do you want to blow on the line, Dennis? Benny Carroll yells over the wind and the noise of the fire. Benny was once a student at the Fort Schuyler Merchant Marine Academy, and I wonder as he approaches if he ever thought that his life with the sea would be realized by directing hundreds of gallons of water through a brass nozzle. Yeah, Benny, you take it for a while, I say, as he grasps the hose. But what I really want is a bearskin rug in front of an open fireplace. Say no more, says Benny, laughingly, an expression he always uses for agreement. Kelsey, Nips, and Vinnie Royce will back Benny up on the line. It's my turn to get lost for a few minutes. Lieutenant Welch is standing nearby watching, waiting for the roof to cave in. I tell him that I'm going to look for a place to get warm. The water is frozen over his rubber coat, and it flares at the bottom like a ballerina's dress. Because he is an officer, he has to stay with the men on the hose line at all times. He's jumping from foot to foot, trying to get his blood to circulate. He looks at me and nods his head. He doesn't talk because he knows words don't mean anything at fires like this. He only cares about putting enough water on the fire. Tom Welch has been working in the South Bronx for over 15 years, and he knows there is no challenge in this fire. If we were crawling down a hallway or fighting our way into a cellar, he would be talking all the time. He would be saying the words that give us the confidence to move into a building everyone has run out of. But now we are just standing in front of a building, pouring water on it. It's cold, and our bodies are being beaten, and Lieutenant Welch just nods. As I walk down the street in search of a warm hallway, I hear a soft but distinct crashing noise, like someone dropping a steel safe on a pile of thin balsa wood. As I turn, I see a giant mushroom of fire surge toward the sky. Part of the roof has fallen, and the new oxygen overhead acts as a magnet for the fire. The old dying building is a 3-story wooden structure called a Queen Anne. It's a kind of Gothic house that Edgar Allan Poe would have delighted in writing about. It has a series of peaked roofs and widow's walks, and many small rooms with spaces between the walls and between the ceilings and floors. This type of building is particularly difficult for firemen to work in. Fire spreads quickly in small enclosed spaces. It was just a little over an hour ago that we were sitting in the firehouse kitchen. The radiators were hissing, and the coffee was steaming. We had already responded to 12 alarms since our tour of duty started at 6 o'clock, and except for one, all had been small ventures into the night's cold. 2 were mattress fires, 1 was a burning abandoned car, and the rest were garbage fires or false alarms. The exception was a midnight alarm for a burning couch. We saw the smoke coming from a window on the 6th floor of a tenement building on Charlotte Street. It seems that most of the fires we have are on the top floor. Each time I drag hose up 5 or 6 flights of stairs, I curse the designer of the building, and I think how much easier the job would have been had he taken firefighting into consideration. He could have put a standpipe in the building, or at least a well between the staircases so that the hose could go straight up instead of snaking around the bends. We stretched 4 lengths of hose into the building, and 5 more lengths trailed behind to the fire hydrant. 9 lengths of hose for a rotten couch fire that could have been extinguished with a glass full of water 5 minutes earlier. The guy who lived in the apartment was sitting on the stairs in the hall smoking a cigarette and saying he didn't know how the fire started. He looked and sounded drunk, but who knows? And when you think about it, who cares? The weather got to us on Charlotte Street. When we tried to uncouple the hose connections, we found them frozen solid. Each of the 5 links laying in the street were bound together by the cold that now prevented my fingers from moving. We had to lift each 71-pound length of hose over the standing exhaust pipe of the fire engine to warm the connections. This kind of extra work is frustrating because there is no one to blame but nature. Kelsey and Nips had involved almost everyone in the kitchen in a plan to beam the ceilings in Nips' house. Plans were being worked on, and a scale drawing was put on the blackboard. Nips had asked Kelsey if he knew anything about installing overhead beams. Kelsey asked everyone else. And what had begun as a simple inquiry turned out to be a full-scale project where beam designs were being created for all his rooms. Firemen are like that. The slightest problem or question invites full participation. That is what we were doing a little over an hour ago when a second alarm was sounded for box 2317, Forest Avenue and 158th Street. Plans, drawings, coffee, and hissing radiators were left behind as we hustled our way to the fire. 3 engine companies were assigned on the first alarm, and 2 ladder companies. When the battalion chief saw the large body of fire, he ordered a second alarm. Engine 82 was assigned on the second. We could see the red glare in the sky as we left our firehouse, which is about a mile away. As we turned the corner on Forest Avenue, we saw that Engine 73 and Engine 41 were backing their lines out of the building. We knew then that we would be here for some time, because the faster you can get close to a fire, the faster it will be extinguished. But because of the imminent danger of a roof collapse, it was impossible to get close. Now, I'm standing across the street from a burning building, and I'm hoping for its quick destruction. If the rest of the roof would only come down, then we could go in and put the fire out. I can hear the firehouse radiators hissing as I walk down the street searching for a warm hallway. Except for the burning buildings, the hallways and the block are cold. I try each door, but as I enter, I find each colder than the one before. I return to the building directly across from the fire. Several firemen from other companies have the same idea as I and are standing around the lobby. We are walking back and forth or jumping up and down. It is too cold to sit on the floor and relax. I take a cigarette out, and heavy smoke pours from my mouth as I ask for a light. 3 men search their pockets before a dry pack of matches is found. Jim Gentell from Squad 2 lights my cigarette. Jim is an old friend of mine. We played the bagpipes together in the Emerald Society Band. "Bad night, Dennis. Bad night," he says as he takes his rubber coat off. Like all of our coats, his coat is frozen, and it stands by itself against the wall. The lobby light is reflected by the ice, and the coat appears jeweled. Jim laughs. "Now, if we were only pygmies, we'd have a ready-made teepee." Everyone laughs at Jim's joke, but nobody adds to it. It's too cold to be funny. I can't help thinking that in another place, another city perhaps, where fires are uncommon and exciting, apartments up and down the street would be opened, and residents would be serving coffee and biscuits and offering the warmth of their homes to the firemen and to the victims of the fire. I think of Dylan Thomas's Miss Prothero, asking if I would like something to read. But we are in New York City, where neighbors traditionally don't bother to find out each other's names, where people live their lives within the walls of their apartments, where a raging fire across the street burns unwatched. There are 6 doors around the lobby, but it is almost 3 o'clock in the morning, so I erase the thought of knocking on any one of them from my mind. I remind myself that people have to go to work in the morning. Anyway, this is what I am paid for. Fighting fires all the time. Fighting fires all the time, not just on pleasant spring afternoons. Jim Gentell, who is pacing, jumping, and rubbing his arms, has found a 7th door. "Hey, man, anyone got a claw tool?" he asks, his words echoing through the hall. He is a medium-sized man with graying hair, and he wears an ever-present smile. Even in the worst situations, Jim has something funny to say. We were once trapped above a fire along with Lieutenant Nandry, Kelsey, and Nips. The burning building was a 2-story factory, and we had thought that the fire below us was completely extinguished. Jim was helping us advance the hose on the 2nd floor. We were making slow but sure progress when we realized the floor beneath us was burning. We tried to back down the stairs, but they were completely engulfed in flames. There was too much fire for our one hose line to control, and there was no way out. We had to make a choice between sticking it out and hoping that other lines would appear quickly to help us out, or jumping out of the window. Fire is fast and deadly, so we didn't have much time to decide. I was for making it out the window, since it was only about a 20-foot drop. Kelsey and Nips were for sticking it out, since they were sure Engine 50 would have another line there in a minute or two. Lieutenant Nandry had gone to the window to look things over. We looked at Jim Gentell, and through the thick smoke we could see him sitting back on his haunches. We were all choking and coughing, but Jim put a cigarette in his mouth, smiled, and said, "Anyone got a match?" Fortunately, the chief realized where we were, and had a ladder placed to the window before I had to think about lighting Jim's cigarette, or keeping the fire from lighting it for him. Looking around the lobby, I can see that no one has tools with them. "No claw tools around here, Jim," I reply. "What do you want one for?" "The furnace room is under the stairs," he says, "but it's locked up. All we need is a claw tool to break the hasp. The way I feel now, all I want to do is open the furnace doors and crawl in with the coals. Somebody go get a claw or a hook or a halligan, anything." Big Van, a huge man from Ladder 42, leaves us to look for a tool. There are now 7 firemen in the lobby, including Jim and me, and we all gather around the furnace room door. Jim is the only man who has ventured to take his coat off. The rest of us know that there is no sense taking our coats off until there is some possibility of getting warm. Jimmy McClure from the squad has a screwdriver and begins to turn the screws in the hasp. Good. Now the superintendent of the building won't be as mad as he would be if we broke the hasp off altogether. Jim Gentell asks, "Anybody stop to think that this is breaking and entering?" "A small crime committed in the name of humanity," I say rather proudly. "Humanity, hell," Jim retorts. "I'm only thinking about us here. There won't be enough room in there for the rest of humanity. Big Van returns with a Halligan tool, a steel bar with a claw at one end and an adze and a pick on the other. Shove it, Jim says. McClure's almost got it now. McClure removes the last screw, and the hasp swings freely on its hinges. I have carefully positioned myself on McClure's left, so that I'll be the first one in as the door is opened. As the door begins to swing out, I can feel the moisture and the warm air escaping. I'm the first one in the room. There are 2 concrete steps leading down to the boiler pit. I don't want to go any further unless I can see where I'm going. Someone turn on the light, I say. Hands go up on either side of the doorway, and they slide the walls. The switch is found and the room is lighted. I look around and begin to shake. I can feel my stomach turning, and the relief of the room's warm air just brings sweat to my forehead. The walls are covered with cockroaches and water bugs scurrying in every direction. Some are as long as 3 inches, and as they scamper, the smaller ones drop from the walls. The light has surprised and confused them. I look up at the ceiling, and it too is a moving black mass. Roaches are falling all around us, and as they hit the floor, they shoot in the direction of the coal pile, as if propelled by a twisted rubber band. There is a concrete ledge around the boiler pit, just high enough to sit on. McClure throws his coat against the wall. It hits, then falls on the ledge. He walks down the 2 steps, picks up his coat, and begins to swing it against the wall. The roaches are fleeing from this madman, and he continues until a portion of the wall is cleared. He sits down, and the other men begin to sit or stand around him. I don't want to appear alarmed in front of the other firemen, but I know I have to get out of this room, out of this building. I've been nervous about roaches since I was a kid. I grew up on the east side of Manhattan in the shadows of Sutton and Beekman places. I lived in a tenement much like this one, and each Sunday my aunts, uncles, and cousins would climb the 5 flights of gum-stained marble stairs to our apartment. They would bring beer and soda and food for the weekly visit. At the end of the day, after all the Irish songs were sung and after a fist fight with a cousin or 2 was won or lost, the empty bottles would be gathered up and stored beneath the bathtub, which was prominent in our kitchen. The following morning, the bottles would be put in a large brown paper bag. It was my job to take them to the store for the deposit, which my mother would share with me. One sunny Monday morning, I noticed as I was carrying the bag down the stairs that there was a half-inch of beer remaining in one of the bottles. I put the bag down and put the bottle to my lips. Since children don't sip things, I put the lip of the bottle wholly into my mouth. The bottle was emptied, and as I was about to swallow, I felt something moving within the liquid. I spit the beer out, and with it came a long, thin, brown roach. I was 9 years old then. It happened more than 20 years ago, but I still can't forget it. Jim Gantel is running back and forth in the small space in front of the furnace. He is demonstrating how to masturbate an elephant, and as he runs toward me, both of his hands are about a foot apart and above his left shoulder. He stops, puts both hands above his right shoulder, and runs back. The men are laughing wildly. I leave the room unnoticed. In the lobby, I see that Jim's coat is still standing. I take my own coat off and hold it at arm's length. The cold quickly penetrates my arms and chest. I inspect the coat carefully for roaches, and then put it back on. I take my heavy canvas gloves from the pocket and push my hands into them. They are frozen, and I have to apply strength to move my fingers. I pull the metal door open and return to the fire. In the street, I can hear the man in charge of the fire, Chief Marks, yelling, and his voice reminds me of a high G on a saxophone. Some chiefs direct fire operations the way NASA control directs moonshots. calmly and with great self-assurance. Others, like Chief Marks, lead their men like Leonard Bernstein conducts the New York Philharmonic in a Stravinsky symphony, with frenzy and great excitement. While a competent man, he is known by firemen to be a screamer. Not a very complimentary title in our business. Instead of controlling overall operations with dignity and expertise, he runs helter-skelter at a fire, overseeing each operation, each hose line, each ladder placing. I once saw him yell at a respected New York photographer for standing around and ordered him to place a ladder at the side of a burning building. The photographer, who was taking shots on assignment, simply walked away. I guess the chief took him for a fireman because he was wearing a rubber coat that he had borrowed. Evidently, he missed the wide cardan tie and gleaming Gucci shoes. Chief Marks holds the rank of Deputy Assistant Chief of Department, which in the military structure is roughly equivalent to a bird colonel. When he yells, he expects people to react as an Army private would to a general. He is now yelling at Lieutenant Welch. "Keep that line directed at the roof, Lieutenant. What the hell is the matter with you? Keep the line where I tell you." Tom Welch has been around for a long time, and even before he was promoted to lieutenant, he didn't think of himself as a private. He was a fireman who knew what he was doing, a professional. The wind is gusting heavily now as I stand behind Vinnie Royce, but I can hear my lieutenant yell over the noise, "Listen, Chief, I'm freezing my ass off, and I want to put the fire out as much as you do." "What did you say?" the chief asks, the anger bulging out of his Irish face. Lieutenant Welch realizes the futility of a confrontation with a chief at a fire. There is no such thing as being a Jacksonian Democrat in the fire department. "Yeah, Chief," he replies. "At the roof, I know." Years of experience show in his resignation. Benny Carroll has the stream directed at the fallen roof. The icicles hanging from his helmet look like tassels on a party hat, but there is no indication that the wearer is having fun. His face muscles are strained, and the veins in his neck are raised. The wind is howling fiercely now, and the water comes back like a sand blast. It seems like small particles of glass are being wedged into my skin. I think momentarily of the small pleasure of heat in the furnace room across the street. Benny is calling for relief, and Willie Nips moves up to take the nozzle. I take my place behind Kelsey and Royce, grasp the 2.5-inch hose with all my strength, and push forward to relieve the back pressure. Lieutenant Welch is standing next to us, and I say, "That chief has a big pair, yelling like that, especially on a night like this. All he has to do is walk around with a walkie-talkie for a little while, and then he gets into a heated chief's car and forgets about us." "Yeah," Lieutenant Welch says, "but at least you know what to expect from him. He yells a lot, and he's a ball breaker, but he'll never hurt you." I'm a little surprised that he's defending the man who just harassed him, but I know what he means. Some chiefs never yell, but if a fireman is a minute late for work, if he has white socks on instead of black, or if he is found smoking on the apparatus floor of the firehouse, they will not hesitate to write department charges against the man. The fire department is run as a semi-military organization, and we have a book of rules and regulations. These rules are inviolable. If a man is charged with an infraction of these rules and regulations, then, as in the case of a military court-martial, he is required to stand trial before department administrators. Very few firemen are found innocent at these trials, and when found guilty, a man can be fined as much as 30 days' pay or even be discharged. So, when a fireman says a chief will never hurt you, it is a very high tribute. The fire in front of us has darkened down some. The flames have disappeared into the building. Hundreds of thousands of gallons of water have been poured into it, and it won't be much longer before it is a smoldering, rickety ash heap. Tomorrow the cold will sweep through its charred rooms, and its dispossessed tenants will sift silently through the ashes looking for something to save. But there won't be much left. and they will leave the building forever with half-empty shopping bags. Lieutenant Welch is next to me, and he is jumping from foot to foot again. His arms are crossed, and he's squeezing himself. "It's getting to you, Lou, huh?" I say. "Yeah," he replies. "When we first got here, I forgot to pull my boots up, and I have about 2 inches of water in them. My feet are freezing, but I don't want to pour the water out, because what's in there is acting like insulation. I think I'd give a week's pay and 2 of my children for dry boots and a pair of socks." He smiles, and I laugh. My own boots are up to my thighs and my feet are dry, and I feel a little guilty that he's suffering more than I am. There is a loud cracking noise, and the sky before us is again filled with fire. The rest of the roof has come down, and the fire is let loose from its confinement, but it won't last long. All the lines around the building are directed at the roof. The fire darkens quickly, and we know it will be over soon. The cold has beaten us, but we won't have to outlast it. Chief Marks comes toward us, and in his excited manner yells, "Lieutenant, get an 1.5-inch line and take your men to the top floor." He doesn't wait for Lieutenant Welch to respond, but passes us to scream his orders to another company. Bill Kelsey doesn't wait for Lieutenant Welch's instructions and leaves us to get the smaller hose. The fire has suddenly become a challenge, and I can see the enthusiasm in the lieutenant's face. He calls to Royce, in a voice loud enough for all of us to hear, "We won't need masks. The place is vented enough. With the 1.5 inch, we'll have this fire out in 10 minutes. The smaller hose is much easier to work with. Kelsey returns with a 50-foot length of 1.5-inch hose, and he couples it onto the 2.5-inch nozzle. Carol makes a motion to take the hose, but Kelsey says, "Up yours, Benny. I went to get it, and I get to take it in." Carol laughs and says, "Well, it was worth a try." I can see that Benny is disappointed. The real work, the real challenge in firefighting lies with the man controlling the nozzle. Kelsey follows Lieutenant Welch into the building. We are right behind them, pulling on the big hose, which trails behind the smaller length. Engine 73 is already in the building, dousing the small pockets of fire on the first floor. Engine 50 is doing the same on the second floor, and Ladder 42 and Ladder 19 are pulling at the ceilings and walls with hooks and Halligan tools. The smoke is light, but irritating. My eyes are tearing. My head still aches from the cold, but I don't think about it as the warmth of the fire sinks into my body. We pass the companies working on the second floor and pull the hose to the third. There is still a lot of fire here, but it is buried beneath the fallen roof and ceiling. The fire burns a deep orange, duller than if it were burning in the open air. There is a long hall at the top of the stairs. The bearing wall, which once separated the hall from the apartments, is now a crumpled mass of plaster and metal lath. I can see the rear wheel and the sprocket of a bicycle protruding from the debris. It's a sad part of this business to see the ruins of what must once have been a child's most valued possession. But I'm glad it's only the bike. It's much sadder when we have to dig the little owner of that valued possession out from under a mess like this. Fortunately, the occupants of this building all made it to safety. But each foot of the building will be searched nonetheless. I can remember finding the body of a man who died from heat exposure in a fire. We had been told that the man had moved out of the place, that he was living with his daughter. We found him in his pajamas, lying dead on the bathroom floor. The smoke is heavy now, but it is broken by the wind pushing through the caved roof, and it is lifting. Our noses are running, even with the inconstant smoke, and we have to keep our heads low. Heat and smoke rise, so a fireman usually stays as close to the floor as possible. Kelsey is on his stomach and crawling through what was once a doorway on his left. Lieutenant Welch is beside him, directing the beam of his portable lamp before them. The nozzle is opened, and Kelsey is swinging it wildly, but with confidence. He pushes into the apartment rooms, slowly but progressively, killing the fire as he goes. Suddenly, he jerks up to his knees. He closes the nozzle, shoves it down his right boot, and reopens it. The water spills over the boot top, What's the matter, Bill? Nips asks. I don't know, Kelsey answers. I must have gotten something down my boot. Did it burn you? I don't know, but it hurts like hell. Let me take the line, Nips says as he moves up. No, it's all right. Let me make the next room. Come on, take a blow. We have the whole goddamn floor to go yet, Nips says, almost pulling the nozzle from Kelsey's hands. Yeah. Go take a blow, Bill, Lieutenant Welch says. See how bad it's burned. Kelsey has no choice now. He moves out, and I take my place behind Nips. Give me some more line, Nips yells. Carol and Royce struggle to hump the hose in. We pass through what is remaining of the last two rooms. The bulk of the fire is extinguished, but there is still smoke coming from behind the walls by the window frames. A ladder company will have to rip holes in the wall so that we can get to the source of the smoke. We can back out of these rooms for the time being. There is still fire in the other apartments. Nips hands the nozzle back, and I hand it to Carol. It's about time, he smiles, and his teeth are emphasized against his smoke-darkened face. The floor is burned through in places, and Lieutenant Welch cautions Benny and Royce to be careful. Benny Royce is saying, That's it, Benny, that's it. Move in. Move in. But Benny is a seasoned firefighter and needs no words of encouragement. He moves quickly in and out of rooms, over and under arched beams, laying across their path, moving the nozzle in a circular motion as he goes. Vinny, Lieutenant Welch, and Benny return to the hall and are about to enter the last set of rooms. I'll take it now, Ben, I say. No, that's okay, I can manage, Benny replies. Benny is one of my closest friends, but he wouldn't give the nozzle over to his mother if it meant a free trip to Ireland. There is only one tactic for me to employ, and if it fails, I'll be boxed out of any action at this fire completely. Listen, Lou, I say to Lieutenant Welch. The easiest way to do this, probably, is to relieve each other on the knob. Lieutenant Welch smiles, and I can see he knows what's going on. It doesn't matter to him who has the nozzle, because he is next to the man all the time, and anyone in Engine 82 can do the job. Dennis is right, Benny, he says. Let's not knock ourselves out. Say no more, Benny says, as I take the knob. This is a game we play among ourselves, called Steal the Knob, and Benny understands. We can play it at a fire like this because we are not having great difficulty in breathing, and the job is relatively easy. But it is not a game we can play often. The rooms before me are hotter than I anticipated. I am on my knees and sitting on my heels. Lieutenant Welch is beside me in the same position, and Nips is behind, feeding the line to us. We advance slowly, moving on our knees forward, inch by inch, as if we were on a holy pilgrimage. We can't see the sky in this apartment, and the smoke has nowhere to go. We have extinguished the remaining fire in 3 rooms, and there is only one more room to go. It is in a corner of the building, and the fallen roof gives the impression of a cathedral ceiling. We have to creep along on our stomachs. The room has lit up completely, and the fire is reaching out toward us. It seems to be dancing, and as it moves, it makes me think of an animated film of the sun I saw recently at a science fair. All about a moving fire, 110 times larger than the Earth, holding our solar system together. The room before me is only 10 by 12 feet, but it's the closest any of us will get to the heat of the sun. I have my head down now, and the nozzle is directed at the ceiling. I don't have to look up. I know the fire is cooling because the smoke is banking down. Lieutenant Welch is next to me saying, "Beautiful, Dennis, beautiful. Keep the stream on the ceiling. We got it made. It's a cup of tea. Let's move in another foot." The fire is out now, but the smoke is still heavy. There must still be fire in the walls or caught between the ceiling and the roof. We will need a truckman here fast before it lights up again. "Hey, get a ladder company up here to pull the ceilings," Lieutenant Welch yells back at no one in particular. The room is still hot, but we are kneeling again. The water from the nozzle is cooling the walls and spraying back at us. My body is wet with perspiration, and the spray feels good. "Shut down the line. I'm coming in, and I don't want to get wet," comes a voice from behind. "It's too damn cold out to get wet." I had forgotten about the cold. Big Van from Ladder 42 has come with a 6-foot hook. The long wooden handle with its spiked end looks like a broom handle next to Big Van. He is 2 heads taller than I, and when he reached 260 pounds, he quit drinking beer. He drinks scotch now, by the glassful, like we would drink beer, or a Frenchman his wine. "What's the problem here? What do you want me to do?" he asks, in that sincere way peculiar to big men. The smoke doesn't seem to affect him at all. "Pull the ceilings, Van," Lieutenant Welch says. "See where all that smoke is coming from at the corner?" Van pushes his hook up at the ceiling, and it goes through the plaster and lath like a pin through a sponge. He pulls the ceiling down in huge chunks, and we can see the fire. He backs out of the room so I can hit the fire, and when he returns to pull more of the ceiling, he complains about the drops of water falling on him. Our job in this apartment is finished. The ceilings and walls are open. The fire is out. We return to the other rooms to let loose a final bath. Big Van works with his hook, and Vinnie Royce, who has usurped the knob, takes care not to get him wet. Chief Marks thunders into the room. He directs his portable lamp around the corners and carefully checks for signs of living fire. "How you do here, Lieutenant?" he roars. Lieutenant Welch answers quickly. "Second due on the second alarm, Chief." Since we are the second engine company assigned on the second alarm, Lieutenant Welch knows that there is not much left for us to do here, and he waits for the order that relieves us. The first alarm companies will give the building a final washdown. Chief Marks moves from room to room, apartment to apartment, looking at every cranny and corner, fallen beam and ceiling. He moves past us, and without looking in our direction, says, "Take up, 82. Those are the words we want to hear. We will be back in the firehouse soon, and with dry clothes on, we will sip coffee in the warmth and security of the kitchen. Again in the street, the cold attacks me. The wet clothes stick to me. Chills run up and down my back. There is a lot of work to be done here, but it's not our work this time. The wind and the cold won't bother us any longer. The first alarm companies will have to fight it out. We're going home." Chief Mark's aide is standing in front of the burned-out building, a walkie-talkie strapped over his shoulders. The thing is blaring out the chief's orders, and Carol has to yell over the high screeching sound. "Hey, what happened to Bill Kelsey?" "Who's Bill Kelsey?" the aide yells back. "The guy from Engine 82 who got something down his boot." "Oh, him," the aide returns. "They brought him to Fulton Hospital in the chief's car. He's got a nasty burn on his thigh, you know?" "Anybody else hurt?" Carol asks. Yeah, a guy from Engine 50 fell through the floor. A guy named, Roberti or Roberto, something like that." It's all very impersonal. When a guy gets hurt at a fire, it's easier to remember the injury than the man's name. There are many names, but the injuries are all about the same. A guy got burned, he fell through the roof or a floor, he got cut by falling glass, the ceiling or a wall fell on him, or he was overcome by heat or smoke. These injuries can't be prevented, not as long as the best way to put out a fire is to get close to it. The hose couplings are frozen, and we have to hoist them over the exhaust pipe again. Billy Valenzio, the company chauffeur, leans down from the top of the engine, grabs the hose with one hand, and lifts it over the steaming pipe. I can see the strain in his handsome Italian face and say, "I'd help you, Billy, but I know that a good-looking guy with muscles like yours can handle the job by himself." "Yeah," Benny Carroll says. "If I had arms like you, Bill, I'd pick up the hose 2 by 2. Anyway, Royce interrupts, you'd probably get mad at us if we tried to help you. Every time you pick the hose up, you say to yourself, man, this is good for my arms. I can feel the muscles getting bigger and bigger. Come on, guys, what did I do? Valenzio laughs. Just because God gifted me with strength and beauty is no reason to take this abuse from guys like you. Billy, in fact, has large muscular arms that go with his large muscular chest, and he has every reason to be vain, but he isn't. It is because he is such a humble guy that we give him the business every once in a while. You're all jealous, he says, as he strains with the next coupling. I'm not jealous, Nip says, climbing up the side of the apparatus. He helps Billy with a hose until the coupling thaws and loosens. I figure if I do what you do, maybe someday I'll have arms like you. The laughing is over, and the hose is laid on the bed of the apparatus. The wind blows even harder as the apparatus moves down the street toward the firehouse. It's almost 5:30 a.m. as the truck backs into the firehouse. The stillness of the early morning hour is broken by the harsh sound of a siren as a police car speeds down Intervale Avenue. But we don't pay any attention to it. All we care about is sitting in the warm kitchen and relaxing for a while. I am changing into a dry pair of pants as the bells come in. Oh, damn it, give me a break, I think as I slide down the pole from the second floor to the apparatus floor. Fortunately, the box that has been pulled is only 5 blocks away on Boston Road. It is a false alarm. In 10 minutes, we have responded, made a search of the neighborhood, and returned to the firehouse. We have 2 more false alarms before the day crew begins arriving at 8 o'clock. It is 9 o'clock before I start the 60-mile drive home to a good day's sleep.
And that was a report from Engine Company 82 by Dennis Smith, Chapter 2. Back in a minute. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.